All right, how are we looking here? Are we good to get going?
Yeah, let's get started. How you doing, Apple?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Cool, man. Well, let's be having like this Twitter space. We'll be doing them monthly. Last month we couldn't do it for. I actually we were all pretty busy, and yeah, I think I've got a little plan here for this AMA. Um, First of all, so a few news. So our testnet is live for a few days more. We're looking for people testing it out, uh, doing some deposits, doing some borrows, and we need some feedback. So if you guys want to give it a try, just like join our Discord. Just go on app.lodestarfinance.io. Um, and yeah, Apple, would you like to give us more rundown on what is expected from this testnet and what should be done?
Yeah, sure. testnet is just gonna stay up, obviously, past relaunch, and we'll be using it to test whatever we have coming next, and we'll always make announcements about that. But really, we're just looking for people to just play around with it, try to break it, you know, test out the UI UX features, and let us know what you think, and what can be improved upon, and things like that.
Cool. So we've got a channel on Discord called Testnet Feedback. So if anyone wants to deposit some feedback and earn a role, Seaman role, yeah, please feel free to do it. We've also been having the Hats Finance audit contest, started on the 9th of March, ended a few days ago. First of all, thanks to all the participants. It was a pretty interesting, from my perspective, pretty interesting collaboration with Hats Finance. It was the first time for me witnessing this kind of experiment. But Apple, would you like to tell us how was it from your dev's perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really good. Again, thank you to everyone who participated. I don't know if anyone in here are some of the participants, but nevertheless, we got a fair amount of submissions for the most part. Minor optimizations here and there, or gas efficiency improvements. Nothing critical or anything like that. But overall, the experience was a good one, and yeah, we're going to
And
be going over the submissions for the next couple of days, and then everything will
and
get
what
resolved. And go
how
ahead.
the how would it look like from when you mean gas optimization? How would you explain that to non-dev?
Well, whenever you deploy a contract or interact with any of the contract functions, it can cost some amount of gas, and it's dependent on how that's computed. So there are ways to optimize for it.
Hmm.
We got a few suggestions around that, and we're not some of this stuff. We're sort of moving to a lower level priority and plan to make the change in the future, and lump some of those changes in with the next audit we get, because they're more optimizations and improvements rather than fixing anything that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, because the submissions are ranked, right? So you have three types of submissions.
Yeah, so I think the types are critical or severe, um, medium, and low, and I think the fourth one is gas savings.
Hmm.
So basically, obviously, critical being something that puts user funds at risk, and something that would need to be fixed immediately before putting anything in production. None of those, so obviously that's good. Um, for the most
Cool.
part, people would label them in different ways. No real medium ones to speak of, and then a lot of them were, like I said, low priority um, improvements and optimizations that we'll make, and we'll maybe compile a list, or and everything's public on the GitHub. So um, that we plan to make and then lump into a future audit that includes those sort of improvement changes, along with staking and all that stuff.
Sweet. So in the meantime, you've been working on the liquidation boat, right?
Yeah.
And could you give us like a small rundown or explanation of what this work has been around?
Yeah.
Could,
So obviously, a inherent issue with the compound model is that it relies on liquidators to liquidate bad positions, to prevent the protocol from accruing bad debt. And, being on Arbitrum, being sort of a grassroots, smaller, community, smaller chain, smaller everything, it's not a reasonable assumption to rely on, the public or altruistic parties to liquidate bad accounts and, run liquidator bots. So we have to build something that's, able to handle any sort of market volatility very quickly, as with some of these assets that we have on there, or, we'll plan to add in the future. We obviously have to be very flexible and able to respond to volatility very quickly. And so that's why we're going with, a model that relies on flash loans and is a little bit more sophisticated than the average liquidator bot, I'd say. But I think in the long run, it'll be worth the work that we're putting it on it.
Sweet. So it would keep like the whole health of the protocol like positive to avoid like cuts and innovations.
We plan to open source it and encourage, and we've set everything up as far as the back end infrastructure with the API and stuff like that to mimic Compound's original API. And there are a lot of open source liquidator bots floating around GitHub, and obviously we encourage anyone and everyone to use that. Snag some liquidations, make some money. But yeah, it's just critical to not as far as like a code security, but a financial security of the protocol. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Of course. And anyone could be running a liquidation bot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Sweet. Another news that happened and that was very, very positive was the liquidity migration from Camelot. I was really impressed.
Super excited about that.
It was super cool. Actually, we were already in touch with the Camelot people from back in the time, from the first launch. And I'll be honest, it was like at the beginning we didn't very much know who were these Camelot people during the first iteration of the protocol. But we're definitely very glad to be joining their team now. And as their team, I mean, moving
better late than never.
Yeah. I mean, better late than never for sure. Especially with the upcoming Arbitrum season, I believe. Definitely very bullish on Camelot. I love what they're doing with their pools, the nitro pools and the structure of these pools, where you can either lock for some time to have a boost in grain emissions. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, the nitro pool is, like you said, very interesting, and it allows, for a lot of flexibility and potentially offering, different rewards for different things down the road.
Yeah. For anyone that forgot, but there's still $5,000 in our sushi pool. So if you provide it in the formal contract, don't forget to move your liquidity to Camelot. I think actually our liquidity is of $800,000, and the volume has been pretty interesting. So definitely very happy about this move. Another question that arises very much is about the ARB airdrop, and would we support it at launch? My answer has been that yes, obviously, whenever it's possible, we would integrate it. And when I mean whenever possible, it means whenever it's safe. Apple, could you give us some details from your dev perspective, how you judge and make your due diligence before adding an asset?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's just probably prudent we have to just go through the code. And to a certain extent, we have gone through the token code a little bit. And for the most part, it looks fine, pretty standard. But obviously, in adding assets, we're trying to establish a sort of standard or, a bar, so to speak, of, what we do and what levels we, I guess, judge something on before moving to list it on the protocol. And, part of that is obviously knowing what you're getting yourself into from the back end perspective of going through the contracts and, really knowing what's going on and obviously connecting with the team and, and making it clear that, or trying to, that any future changes would have to be, announced beforehand or something like that, because a big problem now with a lot of smart contracts is, you have proxy setups and the ability for things to not be so immutable, right? And people make updates to code and push, updates that could potentially be malicious without, getting a chance to go through everything and weigh
Hmm.
what's actually happening behind the scenes. I mean, that's a danger in and of itself, right? Of adding anything to the
Yeah,
protocol.
of
And,
course.
so we have to do our due diligence on that end and just look at the contracts and everything like that. And then obviously a big problem is pricing, right? I mean, ARB just launched, a week ago, less than a week ago, a
Hmm.
few days ago. And, obviously we'd very much prefer to use a chain link aggregator if possible. And we've been talking with those guys a little bit and seeing how they're going to play the situation. And for the, it seems like they've got a close eye on it as well. And, we expect for them to add support for it probably as soon as practical. You know, it meets all of their internal requirements that we know of as it stands now. So there really shouldn't be any reason holding them back besides people operating the nodes and reporting the price. So we will definitely be keeping an eye on that. Um, and yeah, like we're definitely interested in offering it, and we want to do what we can to, you know, establish a standard in this process and also bring it to market as quickly as we reasonably can.
Yep, for sure. And I think when it comes to liquidity, I think there's already 20 or 25 million dollars of liquidity on the pool. So would that be an issue? What would you consider a deep enough liquidity?
Um, you know, as far as quantifiable things like that, Quanta is actually the better person to talk to. He's got,
Oh yeah.
a bunch of spreadsheets and models all laid up and is very knowledgeable about the underlying math. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not sure if there's a hard bar on, the depth of liquidity. Um,
Hmm.
and really, from someone like Chainlink's perspective, they're really looking for a, a spread of different sources of truth and also enough volume so the price isn't, flying all over the place all the time. Um, so, all those things are kind of already being put into place and the
Hmm.
ball's rolling, I'm sure, over there with those guys. So I don't expect it to be long before one is up and running. And, that preferably we'd like to do that as opposed to, you know, creating or using a different, type of pricing method like, DEX TWAP pricing or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely going to become a major asset. It already is. So it's just a matter of time before we have a chain link feed. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I think it's definitely probably coming soon, I have to imagine. But we'll keep in talks with them, and we'll obviously keep our finger on the pulse of the situation.
Of course. Cool. One last question, which is we've been hearing. I know we don't have the answer, but it would be when. So, how do you feel about the relaunch, Chapo?
Well, I mean, I'm feeling pretty good about it. I think, it's obviously very tough to like pin down an exact date, right? And obviously we've had
Hmm.
internal discussions and, penciling things in and, internal deadlines and such. And, for the most part, things are progressing pretty smoothly. If you go through the dev updates, every one, is getting smaller and smaller because the list of things to do is getting smaller and smaller. And, we're getting to the point where we're basically crossing our T's and dotting our I's, going through these hat submissions, and we've already assessed them for, what needs to be done now, you know, what needs to be done post relaunch, pre next audit, and what is what we what is not an issue. Um, so we got that, and then going through the liquidator bot and getting that system on two legs, and that's pretty much it. Um, so we're definitely getting close. Like I said, really tough to pin an exact date, and then you're sort of beholden to that, and it's undue pressure, and not to make excuses. I'm sure everyone's just as anxious to get out there as we are, but just out of an abundance of caution, and I'd probably a few weeks, probably. You know.
Yeah, this is like something that I think our core community has understood. Is like we will not give you a date if we're not sure that you can hold it. And most of them have understand it, but yeah, we're not very far from it. For those that aren't aware, every Thursday evening, US time, there is a dev update, so you can check it out on our Discord. We have a channel for that. Also, usually post it on Twitter. And I think, hey, if anyone wants to come on stage, ask a question. I see we have a few community members, Moggy, Doogie. Hi guys. The floor is yours, so please feel free to ask for the mic if you have a question. Apo, in the meantime, anything you would like to add?
Yeah. Just as we sort of move towards the finish line or gearing up towards relaunch, our highest priority is just getting out there. Obviously, we want to be out there as well, right? We have to do it in a safe manner and make sure everything is airtight before we get out there. So
Sweet man. Uh, I'm just checking out in Discord if anyone has asked any question, but I don't think so. Yeah, someone, Kyle, who was connected a few minutes ago here, was asking any background about the team. I think he just joined the community, but hey, if you're asking, Apple, would you like to introduce yourself at least? Some
yeah,
background.
sure. I I'm just a guy who got into Arbitrum, sort of with the magic wave way back. And, we initially started this project as we were really interested in Magic Dragon DAO and what they were doing and their plans for DR Magic, and, sort of thinking about these yield bearing assets on Arbitrum and, what you could do with them besides just hold them. And obviously, a really obvious answer to that is, the compound money market solution, or, just decentralized money market, and bring that to some of these assets that we felt lacked, representation in that DeFi ecosystem. And, this is not, um, I'm not I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're just very excited to be building this, and I don't.
Hello? I think we lost you.
Yeah, sorry, maybe I'm breaking up a
Yeah,
little
no
bit.
worries. And yeah, to answer Kyle and give also some background myself, I'm Waffle. I've been in Arbitrum community a little bit. Well, it's been like since the beginning of the DOPEX era, beginning of last year. And yeah, I mean, we're mostly DeFi enthusiasts and definitely enjoying building on Arbitrum. Mogi, you're a speaker. If you have any question, I saw you requested the mic. Please feel free.
What up, Waffle? Napo. How's it going, guys?
How are you, man?
Good man, how you doing?
Good. I was just sitting, got back to my house and got into Discord and saw the AMAs. Like, oh shit. Hopefully I didn't miss it. So I had a question for the exploit fund. And I know this might be something that's more for Quanta. We haven't talked much about any details around what that would look like, the 750,000 load tokens. And, I think a lot of the people in the community um, that would be eligible for that. Everyone's excited to see like the price action and the growth leading up to launch. I'm wondering if there's any details Waffle you or Apple could share on what you guys think that would look like. Obviously, it would be some sort of vested allocation, but anything you guys have talked about. And I think also I read somewhere that it would be once load staking goes live as well. But yeah, any details would be interesting.
Yeah, sure. I can field that one. We've definitely been having internal discussions about how the best way to handle that would be, whether that be a vol lockup linear vest into native load, or exploring the possibility of possibly doing something like an escrow token, and sort of interfacing that into staking, so your vesting tokens can be staked and part of that whole deal. And we haven't really come to any firm conclusions on what the exact plan is, but we'll definitely keep everyone apprised and, have discussions about this and obviously talk about it in community council and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing in, like you said, within the server and community council, more discussion, but I was thinking about it would be very interesting if there was a mechanism by which a secondary market for the users' eligible tokens could exist. So still with vesting, like obviously, not something where like the tokens are liquid, the new buyer can just like sell them. But if there is some mechanic where like you held an NFT, the NFT was tradable, and the wallet that holds the NFT has like access to the vesting, that would get interesting because you'd have users that surely would, sell their stake for a discount to, get out sooner versus the long-term, committed people would want to buy those up again. So just something to consider and more discussion, of course. But
No,
it's
yeah, I
interesting,
mean that's an interesting idea. I think it's definitely worth talking about, right? I mean, can get up,
Yeah,
set up maybe like forum posts in the Discord and, obviously have discussions about that and community council meetings and everything. I know the next one is coming up soon. Um, but yeah, no, we're more than open to, having these discussions and, getting feedback from the community on, the things that they'd like to see, right? I mean, it's obviously we're building this, but we're building this for, people who are going to use it. So that sort of stuff is invaluable to us, and we really welcome that.
yeah. And then last question, not related to load, but let's just talk ARB. You guys feeling surprised as the current first week unfolds, or what's your guys' perspective actually being builders in the space of what, the success or the current, how the ARB launch has gone?
I mean, I think that they did it very well. Obviously no launch is perfect. People are going to always have their issues with how these sort of things play out. But all in all, like my personal take on it is I'm sort of surprised that, they made the token and, have gone for this route. Just because they've been so, I guess, staunch in their thing. Like there is no ARB token. There's not going to be an ARB token, blah, 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 for quite some time. And then, their rationale for doing it, I think makes sense. I'm just personally surprised that it all happened so fast, I guess. 1 week it was like, no, there's definitely not going to be an ARB token. And then the next week it was like, okay, yeah, there is going to be one. And it's, you can claim it in a week. And then, here we are.
Yeah, I think I think the distribution has been good, and that it's like it didn't pump as much as people thought. Right? I mean, it's almost been like a
Mm-hmm.
stable coin. I mean, pretty much like
Yeah.
$1.20, $1.30 the last week, or since the launch. So I think it's good. I think we're going to see like, the right accumulation and, the tourists that came in just to try to like farm it. I think it helped that it was capped, only 10,000 whatever per wallet. So, but yeah, definitely surprising for, I mean, someone that's been in Arbitrum for a long time, always talked about, but it became like a meme. And then all of a sudden, actually,
Mm-hmm. Like when
just
token
got out there. So,
constant getting shot down.
yeah, I mean, I'm so bullish on Arbitrum, just like seeing all the projects and obviously DeFi in particular. I know a lot of people are thinking now, okay, ZK season has started. Now the ZK sync went live yesterday or whatever with mainnet. But, it's just like the breadth of projects in Arbitrum, and particularly with what, Lodestar is doing. And it's going to be exciting to see it launch. And yeah, I think doing what you guys are doing is right. I mean, you've launched once, and we want to make sure that the second launch is rock solid. And there's going to be a lot of people asking for all these new tokens to get added, but I think you're doing it the right way, making sure that, it's got a trusted oracle. It's not something that can be easily, manipulated or anything like that. So look forward to being able to ape my stables again into Lodestar. So,
Yeah, and I think that sentiment is just. I mean, like you said, right? Ultimately, it's just the right thing to do, and we see a lot of people jumping in and offering ARB and some of these DeFi protocols. And I mean, my first question is, how are they pricing it? And I mean, all things considered, past events aside, right? I mean, you just got to be sure that you know it's easy to mess up, and it's not very fun when it happens.
I mean, it's a good reminder too, right? Like I've learned Lodestar was the first project I was a part of that unfortunately suffered an exploit. Having been in crypto since 2017, so I've count myself fortunate to have avoided a lot of different things. But the good news is it's a healthy reminder that you really can't discount like the security, vulnerabilities that any protocol, like we all know every single protocol is, doesn't matter how many times it's been audited, there's always potential, for something to happen. So it's a good learning experience, right? Sometimes you got to take those licks to like learn it the hard way. And we saw with Tenderfy. I mean, Tenderfy, obviously doing something similar, and they had a hiccup as well. They got lucky with the white hat returning it, but so these things I think for the community makes us stronger. And like we said, the Lodestar community is like the OGs are rock solid because they've stood behind it and see the team like rebuilding. So my view is in the long run, we're going to look back and say like, as painful as this was, this exploit for Lodestar was laid that like super strong foundation. So, kudos to what you guys are doing and excited to see this thing take off in the next month or so.
Well, thank you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. But yeah, right. And it's so difficult because the landscape is constantly changing, and one of the things that's great about Solidity now is, having this sort of proxy architecture, smart contract setup that allows you to be a little bit more flexible with the code you put out there in terms of, when you do have to make changes. But, ultimately that's a double-edged sword, right? When you're using these sort of assets in DeFi applications and, someone can introduce a breaking change with, very little oversight or I guess intercommunication. And, that can be lethal. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, that's what happened with the Euler attack, isn't it?
I hadn't followed. I mean, I think because everyone was saying, Euler was like so, like very like thoroughly audited and reviewed, and yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance with that whole proxy implementation, where it gives you the flexibility, but like you're saying, it's like the data. I mean, that's the whole thing of like, composability. This daisy chain of all these contracts that get to, talk to one another, be interoperable, but then all of a sudden, one team introduces one, function call that all of a sudden like is the domino that just cripples all these other protocol stacks. So I think, I mean, you're right. The immutability versus like the security feature is something that you always have to consider, which is why if you're relying on other people's contracts, you really got to be sure of anything, not just in the current state, but future proof. What else could they introduce that all of a sudden would blow up like your particular protocol? So I haven't been following the Euler one
Yeah.
closely, but I think you're right. It was something along those lines.
Yeah, it boils down to having like a lot of communication with teams, and we've obviously been in talks with a lot of different teams, and the potential for adding markets, and just starting to build that relationship with them of constantly being in contact, right? I mean, at this point, we're pretty close with the Plutus guys, and we're constantly going back and forth with them about different stuff, and because Plutus is the one, or PLV GLP is really it's more than just a token, right? It's got all that, it's got the vault and all of its underlying applications behind it. So we obviously have to be in close contact with those guys and really make sure everything's on the same page, especially when using this in DeFi applications and when other people's money is on the line.
Is Plutus team, like, I know when the exploit happened, they were, they worked, I think they did the stand-up thing to do, working with the Lodestar community. And then there's kind of the thought that maybe they're trying to distance themselves a little bit. Going into relaunch, are they going to be active at all on like the marketing, or are they going to be more like, yeah, well, we support this, we endorse it, but we like kind of want to let it like see how it goes? You guys have a sense for how active they may be in helping to promote the relaunch?
Yeah, we've talked to them about it, and from our understanding is that yeah, they're going to give us some support um, when we're actually going with the relaunch. But yeah, and obviously things play out the way that they do, and I think their response to the whole thing, like you said, was stand up and doing the right thing and getting that GLP back to the exploit victims was great, and throughout the whole time we've been in constant communications with them and going over stuff, and obviously they're helping us out, and I think ultimately themselves out when as people use PLV GLP more as a building block and making that donate function permission such that only they can call it when they need to, and obviously we've built an entire Oracle system just around PLV GLP itself, and sorry, I think I cut out there again.
Yep, go ahead, Apo. You
No,
were
yeah,
saying
and I was saying,
about the PLV GLP Oracle
yeah,
that was
we
built
built that
around.
entire system out
Yeah.
itself, and sort of tried to have that mentality of future proofing it towards any any changes that could be made down the road with or without our knowledge.
Yeah, and to answer to Mogi, we've been also definitely in touch when it comes to marketing with Plutus, and what they said, and they were right. It's like, and I think it's a good attitude that every protocol should have is they would not promote any protocol that would not be audited. So I think that was our mistake, even at launch. But at least now, like I guess, like Apo said, any protocol that builds on top of PLV GLPs is good for them. So if it's audited and safe, why not collaborate when it comes to marketing? So very happy about that relation we have with Plutus.
For sure. I got to step down, guys, but I want to call Psyology up to the stage because my homie in the server, OG, I want to hear you. Let's get Psyology up here and get some knowledge dropped or drop some questions. But I got to step down, guys. Thanks.
It's great talking to you.
Thanks, Mogi. All right. Anyone else that want to join on stage? Having any question?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything on Discord, but
No.
but yeah, anyone feel free to speak up.
Yeah, same on Telegram. Wait a second, because actually our Telegram group has grown up so much these last weeks. It's been pretty crazy.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Hey, man.
Hey, how's everybody doing?
How are you? Not too bad.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I had to check into this late, but I had written a question in the AMA section on the Discord. Was it already answered? Or maybe I should repeat it?
Yeah, you can just repeat it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
The question was, sorry, everything's melting down at my house right now. Kids, dog, etc., etc. No, come back inside. Okay. The question was, yeah, so we have our baseline of everything laid out for assets and stuff. How would we go when we eventually do add more assets? Hypothetically speaking, wink, wink, not alpha. If we add the ARB token, what would it be like from a security perspective when we add this token? Would it just be as simple as adding it in, or will we have to go back through and re-audit stuff? What does it look like to add a new asset?
Well, ultimately, it's you need a price feed, and you need to come up with market parameters like the collateral factor, reserve factor, and work it into things like the load token distribution, because obviously there's only a finite amount that's being distributed to all the markets. Then when you go to add a new market, you have to sort of pick and pull from other pools in order to make the numbers work. But beyond that, right, just from a security standpoint, the biggest issue by and large is pricing, right? And what are you using as your price oracle, and how manipulation resistant and secure accurate is that? And beyond that, in addition to just where you're getting the price from, you would obviously have to look at the token's overall liquidity on chain, and what the volume is, and just as it relates to price volatility and everything like that. And there are every asset's sort of different in the way that it gets, I guess, analyzed and judged. And I think that sometimes, like say with ARB, right, like it's easy to, I guess, convince yourself that, okay, yeah, the off-chain labs guys, like those guys are pretty confident, and I trust them to make a solid token contract, right? But that's obviously the incorrect approach. So we would need to go through all the code and really get down and dirty with it and understand how everything works, and what future changes could take place, and to be on the lookout for that, and be in communications with the off-chain labs team, which we've started making the connections there and talking to them about that. So we're definitely assessing all of that information, especially as it relates to ARB.
Okay, so it sounds like even if you have all your ducks in a row and the other team apparently has all their ducks in a row and the token's fine, could it ever be the case that another team makes a change at their contract level or something like that that could potentially open up your side of the chain to an exploit?
Yeah, right. I mean, because of the way that the token is set up, in theory, off-chain labs and could introduce some sort of change to the functions of the underlying token that make it susceptible to any number of attacks. And that's why the question isn't black and white, can't we, and cut and dry in that sense. It's obviously a constantly changing and dynamic process that you really need to keep your thumb on it, so to speak.
Okay, very cool. And another thing was, it seems that we were ultimately affected, if I'm not mistaken, our initial exploit, and hopefully the last, was ultimately a result of something within GLP. Did this also happen to TenderFi? Wasn't it a function inside GLP that costed them?
Yeah, there are a variety of different factors that individually made the attack possible on their own. The biggest of which was obviously when the cooldown for redeeming GLP was reduced from 15 minutes.
And who reduced that cooldown?
That would be GMX removed
and
that.
And that
so
occurred after the launch of, like, that's kind of what I was getting at, right? Like they made some sort of adjustment that made that attack possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
So it just seems like you could just get the sheet pulled out from under you so quickly. Like they're probably thinking, okay, we're making a cooldown adjustment, no big deal. Did they post an update to devs like, hey guys, if you're using this, look out? Or
they did make make their intentions known a few like a week or so prior to actually pushing the update. It's really more of a I guess a lapse in, I'll say, awareness of the cascading effect that would have in when in the macro effects of the system, right? Because the PLV GLP Oracle at that time was not manipulation resistant to the exchange rate between PLV, GLP, and GLP, which was obviously the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, in all of these other independent factors that make this possible. Because you have the cooldown reduction on GLP, plus the donate function in the Plutus Vault, plus the way that our Oracle was calculating the price of PLV GLP. And ultimately, as the exploit took place, right, the Oracle price was calculated correctly. It's just that it was not cognizant enough of the fact that there was a manipulation happening, right? And, this was a malicious attack on our protocol. And moving forward with that, right, I mean, obviously we're still going to be offering PLV GLP as an asset, but the market will be drastically different, right? You can no longer borrow PLV GLP. There will be a hard supply cap on the market, and the collateral factor will reflect ultimately the counterparty risk of Plutus and GMX, right? Because you have to account for those things. Just because GLP itself is sort of like an index fund of stable coins and blue chip crypto assets, you still have to operate in a sense of just because you hold GLP does not mean you necessarily hold all those assets, and you're still beholden to GMX in making otherwise breaking changes. But ultimately, you also have to design the Oracle system to be manipulation resistant in every way possible, which is what we've tried to do with the current system that we have running now. You get a chain link price. I'll say you implicitly get a chain link price by calculating the price of GLP from the GMX contracts, because that's just calculated by assets under management divided by total supply, and their assets under management is calculated using chain link price feeds. So the price of GMX is implicitly derived from chain link price feeds for the underlying assets, which is all fine. And the new Oracle, employs a moving average calculation on the PLV GLP to GLP exchange rate given by Plutus, such that, if for any reason in the future, which it shouldn't be possible to happen after Plutus permissions the donate function, but like I said, the space is constantly dynamic and you can really never count out any possibility. In the future, say this situation were to arise again, then, the Oracle itself would not post a manipulated price. It's very much manipulation resistant at this point.
Right. Hey, one more question. Thank you very much for the in-depth explanation. My next question is, liquidation bots will be a necessary part of the Lodestar ecosystem, protocol, etc. The team will likely be running a bot when it starts. Do you guys anticipate other people will soon follow, or do you think they already are in development by other people?
I hope so. We hope to engage the community in meaningful ways post launch, and we had a liquidation contest running before, and I haven't spoken to Waffle about this, but we might do something like that again, just to incentivize people to spin these sorts of things up and help maintain the security of the protocol. Like I said, we plan on open sourcing, the more, I guess, advanced version with the flash loans and everything like that, so anyone can use that as well. And yeah, it's not really our intention to be the sole, I guess, liquidators on the protocol. In fact, we very much don't want that to be the case. So we've built out, like I said, the API and DB backend infrastructure stuff to be as, I guess, I don't know what the right word is.
Modular?
Like, not so much modular, but the fact that it you can use the current open source compound liquidator bots with sort of minimal updates, hopefully, is our intention. So someone who wants to run a liquidator on Lodestar can Google compound liquidator bots and go to all these different options on GitHub and find one that they like. And
do you think this is possible with someone that's not a programmer?
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty user friendly. Obviously, I don't think you can escape using the command line in the terminal for most of them, but I'm sure anyone could really money the way through it if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a dev, and I remember during the first iteration of the protocol, Apple, like in 20 minutes, you run me down on how to run the bot when it was running on my computer. So definitely doable by anyone. Just needs a little bit of tweaking.
No, for sure. And, if it's something that, would help, maybe at some point we can release a guide to taking a simple liquidator bot off GitHub and maybe even make one ourselves that plugs right in. So there's definitely stuff we can do down the road, and we definitely want to involve the community and incentivize people spinning these up in any way that we can. And obviously just through the protocol design, there's, you get an extra 5%, 5.2%, I think, just by liquidating. So on Arbitrum, since transaction fees are significantly lower than layer one, that actually winds up being, a pretty solid margin.
Cool. Oh, thanks a lot. It's been very informative. Thank you, guys, and I'm just super fucking excited for relaunch.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for the questions, and thank you for taking the time to be here.
Yes, sir.
To answer your question, Mogi, well, it depends on the system you're running. If you're using sort of a traditional liquidator bot setup, then capital might be an issue, but you can sort of run this in a loop such that, you liquidate. And this is obviously in a situation where you're the only person vying after this particular liquidation, but liquidate someone, get the money back. You have a little bit more money to liquidate them again, and you just, you keep doing that, and it sort of snowballs on itself. More sophisticated systems use flash loans and stuff like that, so that removes the need for capital, but requires a little bit more technical know-how. So it's sort of a balancing act between those two. If you've got a lot of capital on hand and you want to, try your hand at running a bot, maybe the simpler approach would be better. And there's different ways of getting the required information. We've got our subgraph, we've got the API, and, various different tools can be built around those. And yeah, at the highest level, it does come down to latency when you have, a saturated pool of liquidators all watching the markets and waiting for an eligible liquidation. Obviously, the fastest one to do it is going to be the winner. And so, it does get quite sophisticated, where, you have people watching the transaction pools and trying to front run other liquidators and stuff like that. But that's more of at scale, when, like I said, you have a very large pool of liquidators all trying to go after liquidations at the same time.
Yeah, I just posted on the Discord a great text about this, about sniping bots. And like you were saying, Apple, like people scanning the transactions, try to front run them. And it's one of the first writings about MEV. It's called Ethereum is a dark forest. So yeah, just posted it on Discord if everyone wants to have a read.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Like MEV is pretty crazy. And yeah, I mean, I think it's $1.2 billion of losses every year. And a few weeks ago, I posted a sandwich attack of someone like was swiping 2 million RDPX, and he ended up with $500.
Mm-hmm.
Just sandwich attacks, it's fucking crazy.
No, yeah, I mean, like the level of sophistication you get to when you start operating at those levels is just mind blowing, really, at least to me.
Yeah, and it's actually the same happening with liquidation bots. So yeah, keeps all protocols healthy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and trust me, I'd love nothing more than to be in a situation where liquidator bots are battling it out and, like at that level. But, the whole reason why we're building this system out to begin with, and, this is sort of one of the log jams prior to launch, is that we can't be reliant on that when we get going, and we need to be able to be light on our feet and able to liquidate positions as they come in the day we launch.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be posting it around. Maybe it would be good, like, to post on the compound forums. I guess they have some bot section or something.
Yeah, I mean, like if you Google or search on GitHub for compound liquidator bot, there's dozens of different flavors and variations and levels of sophistication and user friendliness. And obviously, we encourage anyone who's currently running a liquidator bot on Compound to do it on Lodestar. You'd probably be more successful.
Yep.
But especially when we first get going, when there's not any competitors. But yeah, we've just tried very hard. We've put a lot of time into building it out to be as compatible as possible.
Sweet, man. Well, I think we don't have any other question, Apple. Maybe we can call it a night.
Sure.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else,
I think anything else, boys, in the chats? No. Yeah, I think we're good, Apo. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. It's definitely a good
Yeah.
talk.
Thank you all for
Logie,
taking the time. If you have any other questions or something that pops up after the fact, obviously reach out in Discord. We're always around and happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
sweet. I'll be posting also this. The recording will be available on this Twitter, and this week I'll be posting the March newsletter. Will be containing all what we've been talking about. So, yeah, thanks everyone. Have a good
Excellent.
end of Sunday, and see you around.
Yeah, definitely. Everyone enjoy the rest of your weekends. It's nice chatting.